all that celebrations are magnificent, at the heart of the pageantry is a simple message: service.
The decision was brutally simple, but its meaning was impossible to ignore. One final Sandringham key, the last symbol of Camilla's independent access to the Norfolk estate, was formally removed from her control and transferred to Prince William. There was no grand ceremony and no comforting explanation. Just a recorded handover, a stunned reaction, and the unmistakable sense that something inside the royal household had permanently shifted. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla read the short household notice twice before lowering it to the table. Sandringham, the monarch's privately owned Norfolk estate, and a setting for Christmas gatherings, family meetings, and deeply personal royal memories, had long represented more than a house to her. Access carried emotional weight because it suggested trust and belonging inside the House of Windsor. Now the royal household had formally transferred her final independent Sandringham key to William, ending her direct access and placing that authority in his hands. She looked toward the aide waiting nearby and asked only, "Was the king informed before this was entered?" Charles received the same confirmation after the transfer had already been entered into the household record. He did not demand that it be reversed. He did not even reach immediately for the telephone. Instead, the monarch sat with the paper in front of him, unusually still, while the silence around him became more troubling than anger would have been. No one in the room mistook his silence for indifference. The household record, a formal internal note used to document decisions and responsibilities, listed William as the person now responsible for authorizing access tied to the disputed key. That detail made the change feel deliberate, not routine. A courtier then disclosed the most unsettling detail in a documented private briefing. This had been the last Sandringham key personally assigned to Camilla. Other access privileges had already been narrowed one by one, quietly enough that no single change had seemed decisive. Together, however, they formed a pattern. She understood that immediately, and Charles could no longer treat the latest transfer as an isolated adjustment. William accepted the key without triumph. The prince closed his hand around it, studied the official across from him, and asked, "Why now?" He knew Sandringham carried family history, but he also understood that being handed control meant inheriting responsibility, before anyone had explained the emotional cost. And before anyone could understand why Camilla had lost the key, they had to understand what the estate meant to her, what William had just inherited, and why Charles now seemed painfully trapped between them. For William, the key represented responsibility. For Camilla, it represented something far more personal: acceptance, permanence, and the belief that after years of controversy, she finally possessed an unquestioned place inside the royal family. And for Charles, watching authority move from his wife toward his heir transformed a small object into an unbearable reminder that the monarchy was already preparing for a future in which his own wishes might carry less weight. Camilla carried that hurt directly to Charles. She did not challenge him with anger at first. She simply asked whether losing the key meant she was no longer trusted, and the question landed harder because Sandringham had come to represent years of private family acceptance. For her, those gatherings had marked the gradual shift from outsider to established royal partner. The king understood exactly what she meant, but his answer came too slowly. That hesitation hurt more than the formal transfer itself. William felt none of the victory others might have imagined. As heir to the throne, he increasingly represented future stewardship, meaning the responsibility to protect royal property, continuity, and long-term family interests for the next reign. Yet holding the transferred key made that future feel painfully immediate. The prince turned it over in his hand and wondered whether accepting responsibility would now be read as rejecting his father's wife. He knew duty could demand uncomfortable decisions, but he had never wanted authority to arrive looking like someone else's humiliation. Charles finally admitted what he had avoided saying before. Discussions about Sandringham access had been taking place for weeks, and Camilla had not been fully briefed on them. The monarch explained that the review had begun as a narrow question about access and responsibility, not as a plan to isolate her. But she heard something different. She heard that people around her had been discussing her position, while she still believed nothing fundamental was changing. The silence between them hardened. William then received another disturbing detail through a documented household briefing. His name had already appeared on a proposed access revision weeks before the final transfer. Yet no one had told him that the proposal would eventually remove Camilla's last personally assigned key. The future king immediately understood the danger. Someone had used his expanding role as the basis for a decision far more personal than he had expected. The prince asked one question: who had pushed the proposal from review to final order? The answer did not begin with a committee, a document, or a routine security concern. It led back to one uncomfortable encounter at Sandringham that senior household figures had never forgotten. And buried beneath all the official language was the moment that changed everything. One private confrontation that turned quiet concern into a decision nobody could reverse. The key was not taken because of one argument over a door. It was taken because of what happened behind that door, weeks earlier. During a private Sandringham gathering, a disagreement over access to restricted family rooms became unexpectedly personal. William walked into the confrontation, believing he was settling a minor household issue. He walked out, convinced that boundaries inside the estate had become blurred, while Camilla understood that he was no longer prepared to ignore them. Camilla had already sensed tension around access before that weekend. Private royal estates depend on layers of family custom, staff permission, security responsibility, and household authority, meaning even a small decision about who enters a room can become serious when trust is already strained. Questions had quietly grown over who could direct staff during family stays, and who could authorize entry into sensitive areas. Until that day, nobody had forced those concerns into the open. Camilla changed that when she instructed a staff member to open a restricted family archive room for an unscheduled review. The Queen Consort expected the request to be handled without drama, but William entered moments later and stopped it immediately. The archive room, a controlled space used to protect private family records and sensitive material, could not simply be opened without proper clearance. The prince told the staff member to wait, then turned toward her and said the access had not been approved. Camilla felt the interruption as humiliation rather than procedure. With only one senior courtier nearby, she told William that she would not be treated like a temporary guest in her husband's household. She had spent years believing her place inside the family had finally become secure, and now a younger royal was questioning her authority in front of staff. The future king did not raise his voice. He answered quietly, "This isn't about whether you belong. It's about who has authority." That calmness made the exchange colder, not softer. The courtier understood immediately that the argument could not be forgotten. In a documented household account, prepared after the meeting, the official recorded both the disputed request and the words exchanged between them before forwarding the matter for internal review. What might once have ended as an uncomfortable family disagreement had now become part of the formal decision-making process. Charles later read that account alone and immediately saw the trap forming around him. If he defended Camilla without question, he risked weakening William's growing authority. If he supported the prince, his wife would see it as proof that her position was shrinking. Weeks of restrained discomfort had now hardened into policy, and when Camilla finally demanded an explanation face-to-face, Sandringham's quiet dispute became a confrontation none of them could avoid. Camilla did not want another memorandum. She wanted William standing in front of her. When that meeting finally happened, there were no cameras, no public statements, and nowhere for either of them to hide behind ceremony. The question came almost immediately. Had he personally demanded her final Sandringham key? William's answer was measured, but what followed forced Charles to confront the division he had spent weeks desperately trying to contain. Camilla had insisted that household officials stop speaking for the prince. She wanted the answer directly from him, not through another internal note or carefully worded explanation. Charles agreed to attend because the dispute had moved beyond estate procedure. It was now about trust inside the family, and every person in that room understood that one careless sentence could deepen the wound. The written transfer notice, an official household record confirming the change in responsibility, sat between them like evidence neither side could ignore. Camilla placed her hand on the paper and looked directly at William. "Did you ask them to take it from me?" The prince paused. That pause was enough to sharpen the tension before he finally said no. He had not requested that her last key be removed as a personal punishment, and he had never asked for the humiliation attached to it. But he would not reject the revised access arrangement now that it had been approved. To her, that distinction sounded cold. The future king saw responsibility. She heard acceptance of her loss. Charles interrupted before the exchange could turn harsher. The king admitted that he had known an access review was underway, but he insisted that he had not expected the recommendation to end with Camilla losing her final independent key. His words changed the room immediately. She turned toward her husband and understood what he had not told her. He had known something was moving in the background and had chosen silence because he hoped the issue might disappear before becoming personal. William then connected the decision to the confrontation they had all avoided naming openly. In a documented account from the Sandringham weekend, senior household figures had treated the archive room dispute as proof that unclear authority could no longer continue. The prince explained that once staff were uncertain whose instruction carried final weight, the problem became larger than one argument. Camilla listened, wounded but no longer confused. The incident had not been forgotten. It had become justification. Charles finally pushed the paper away and demanded one answer of his own. If he had not personally ordered the transfer, and William had not explicitly asked for it, then who had possessed the authority to make it final? The confrontation had exposed the pain. Now it was about to expose where control inside the household truly rested. The answer was more unsettling than a family feud. The key transfer had survived because the royal household had treated it not as an argument between Camilla and William, but as a question of future stewardship. That distinction changed everything. Charles could express anger. Camilla could feel betrayed. William could remain uncomfortable. Yet once the access review entered the household system, personal emotion was suddenly competing against institutional continuity. Charles asked to see the completed review himself. Sandringham's private household arrangements were handled through estate officials, security responsibilities, and authority delegated by the sovereign and senior members of the family, meaning important access decisions could move through an established chain rather than rest on one person's feelings. The king reached the line, confirming the final transfer, removed his glasses, and set them beside the file. His attending secretary waited. The silence stretched until even that official became uneasy. William's name appeared repeatedly in the recommendations. The disputed review called for sensitive access to be consolidated under him because the heir was expected to assume greater responsibility for royal estates and long-term household continuity. That phrase carried enormous weight. The prince understood that surrendering the new authority simply because the outcome had hurt Camilla would suggest that household safeguards could be reversed whenever family pressure became uncomfortable. Yet accepting it left him looking like the beneficiary of her loss. Charles saw the same trap. Reversing the order might reassure his wife, but it could also weaken an authority structure already being built around his son. The monarch had spent years trying to protect both relationships, and now the machinery of succession was forcing those relationships into competition. Camilla wanted reassurance that she still belonged. William needed proof that responsibilities handed to him would mean something. The king could no longer give one of them everything without taking something from the other. The review then exposed something even more troubling. In a documented finding attached to the final recommendation, officials noted that the archive room confrontation had not created the access proposal from nothing. A draft plan to consolidate sensitive permissions had already existed. The argument merely activated it, giving senior staff the reason they needed to move the proposal forward. Camilla received confirmation soon afterward that the transfer would stand. She did not argue this time. Instead, the Queen Consort asked one precise question. Would her planned Sandringham engagements now need to be cleared through William? The answer was yes. In that instant, the meaning of the decision changed completely. Losing the metal key had been painful. Needing authorization from the future king every time she wished to return made the loss real. The first real blow came with a calendar entry. Camilla was due to spend time at Sandringham, something that had once required little more than ordinary household coordination. Now the request returned with a new instruction. Access would need authorization through William's office. Suddenly the transfer was no longer symbolic. The future king now stood between her and a place she had considered part of her settled royal life, and everyone involved understood how deeply that would wound. Camilla read the revised schedule slowly. She was not banned from Sandringham, but her independent access was gone, and certain visits now had to move through the new chain of responsibility before they could be confirmed. Staff who once dealt directly with her household now had to send arrangements through William's office, making the change visible in everyday practice, even without any public announcement. The Queen Consort reached the Sandringham entry, saw the authorization line beneath it, and pushed the page away. "Cancel it," she told her aide. She would rather miss the visit than submit the request. Charles learned about the cancellation soon afterward and went to her directly. The king tried to explain that procedure was not the same as rejection, but Camilla had already moved beyond that distinction. She told him that needing permission was itself the message. For years, the estate had represented acceptance, familiarity, and a place inside the family that no longer needed defending. Now even an ordinary visit reminded her that someone else held the authority she once carried without question. William reacted differently when the cancellation reached him through a documented household update. The prince had expected irritation, perhaps even resistance, but he had not expected her simply to stay away. That choice disturbed him. The revised structure had been designed to remove uncertainty over sensitive access, not to make Camilla feel unwelcome. For the first time, he saw clearly that a decision that looked orderly on paper was causing damage no administrative review had measured. William quietly asked whether the problem could be handled differently. He suggested a direct conversation that might allow ordinary family visits to continue without weakening the new access arrangement. The future king was not offering the key back, and he was not abandoning the responsibility already placed in his hands. But he was trying to separate authority from humiliation before the distance between them hardened permanently. Camilla refused at first. Then Charles stopped arguing, stopped explaining, and withdrew from the dispute entirely. His silence forced her to make the choice herself. She finally agreed to meet William alone, with no aides, no secretaries, and no household language between them. For the first time since the key changed hands, the conflict would belong only to two people, forced to say what they actually believed. Without Charles in the room, something changed. Camilla no longer had her husband to defend her, and William no longer had palace procedure to absorb the impact of his words. They sat opposite one another, not as queen and heir, but as two people carrying years of complicated family history. The conversation did not restore the key. It did something more important. It finally revealed what each believed the other was trying to take away. Camilla had agreed to the meeting on one condition: no aides, no briefing papers, and no carefully prepared language. William accepted immediately. The prince told her that his concern had never begun with a desire to remove her from Sandringham or diminish her place beside his father. It had begun with uncertainty over authority. And once staff were receiving conflicting instructions, he believed someone had to draw a clear line. For him, the argument had always been about responsibility. For her, it had become something far more personal. Camilla finally said what the paperwork had never captured. Losing the last key felt like being reminded that acceptance inside the royal family could still be taken back. She had spent years believing that question had been settled, and suddenly one small object seemed to reopen it. William did not interrupt. When she finished, the future king admitted that nobody involved in the review had properly considered what the key symbolized to her. That acknowledgement did not erase the hurt, but it changed the tone between them. William then admitted something of his own. Every new responsibility being placed in his hands reminded him that authority was slowly moving away from Charles. The prince said there was nothing comfortable about gaining power while his father was still carrying the crown, because every transfer hinted at a future neither of them wanted to discuss openly. Camilla understood that for the first time. He had not experienced the key as a victory. He had experienced it as another sign that transition was already happening. Camilla revealed the deeper wound through that private conversation. Her strongest anger had never truly been about Sandringham. It came from learning that Charles had known the review was underway and had tried to protect her by withholding the truth. She had wanted honesty, not protection. William understood why that betrayal had become attached to him. The prince offered a compromise. He would keep the consolidated key and the responsibility attached to it, but ordinary family visits by Camilla would no longer be treated as requests, needing his personal approval. She accepted without asking for the key back. Inside the family, the conflict finally softened. Outside, however, one headline was about to turn that private understanding into a national symbol of changing royal power. By morning, the nuance was gone. The compromise, the private conversation, and the painful honesty behind the decision disappeared beneath one irresistible image. Camilla had lost the last Sandringham key, and William now held it. For a public accustomed to reading royal gestures as symbols of succession and favor, the story became instantly larger than access to one estate. It became a referendum on who was gaining influence and who was quietly losing it. William saw the front page before leaving for the day. A fictional morning newspaper had reduced the entire dispute to 3 words: the last key. The headline sat above Sandringham's gates, with a smaller photograph of the prince arriving at a royal engagement. Public discussion immediately focused on symbolism rather than procedure. To many, he now represented expanding future control, while Camilla appeared to be losing the independent authority she had once taken for granted. The future king looked at the page, visibly winced, and told an aide that it made the transfer look like a victory. He had never experienced it that way. Camilla received the same coverage and surprised everyone around her by refusing to fight back. The queen consort had every reason to be angry, but the private conversation with William had changed what the key meant to her. Issuing a furious response would only reopen a conflict they had finally begun to settle. She told her staff there would be no personal statement. That restraint mattered, because the public story was now running far ahead of the private reality. Charles understood the danger immediately. The king approved a short palace clarification, explaining that family access and formal household authority were not the same thing. In simple terms, the revised arrangement changed who managed certain permissions. It did not mean Camilla had been banished from Sandringham or pushed out of family life. The monarch refused to reverse William's responsibility. but he was equally unwilling to let his wife be portrayed as someone stripped of her place altogether. The noise grew before it began to fade. Commentators treated the transfer as evidence that succession was becoming visible through small acts long before any crown changed hands. William was uncomfortable with that interpretation. Camilla no longer wanted to challenge it publicly. Charles, caught between them once again, chose continuity over spectacle. And when the headlines finally began to disappear, one judgment remained. Had Camilla been defeated? Had William won? Or had one small key exposed something more difficult? That every royal transition gives one person greater responsibility while forcing another to surrender what once felt permanent. The answer would come not from who possessed the key, but from what each of them had finally learned to accept. In the end, nobody reversed the transfer. William kept the Sandringham key. Camilla did not demand its return. Charles stopped searching for a way to make every consequence disappear. And that was what finally gave the moment its meaning. The royal family had reached a point where preserving affection could no longer mean preserving every old arrangement. Something had changed, not through triumph or exile, but through the painful acceptance that one generation was beginning to yield authority to another. William remained responsible for the consolidated access structure at Sandringham, meaning the revised system for controlling sensitive entry and household permissions stayed under his authority. The decision was not quietly undone once the public attention faded. Camilla, however, had not been cast out of family life. She could still return through normal household coordination, and that distinction mattered, because losing independent access was not the same as losing the estate, the family, or her place beside Charles. Camilla eventually returned without asking for the old privilege to be restored. The queen consort had stopped measuring her position through possession of the key. That quiet choice carried more weight than another argument ever could. Charles saw the difference immediately. The king finally understood that trying to shield his wife from every uncomfortable change had only made the truth more painful when it arrived. Instead of overturning William's responsibility, he chose simply to stand beside her through it. William made his own final choice when he returned to Sandringham. The prince did not keep the transferred key on his person as if it were some symbol of victory. He placed it inside the secure household cabinet, where controlled estate keys were kept as part of normal responsibility. In that simple act, the future king stripped the object of its drama. It was not a trophy, it was a duty. Camilla had feared that acceptance could still be withdrawn. Charles had feared that he was losing the power to protect the person closest to him. William had feared that every new responsibility would look like something taken from his father's generation. The transfer exposed all three fears, but it also forced each of them to face what succession actually demanded. No one truly won. Camilla lost an old privilege but gained clarity about where she belonged. William gained authority but accepted its emotional cost. Charles learned that succession begins long before a crown changes hands. The key remained with William, Camilla remained beside Charles, and Sandringham remained part of the family they all shared. What ended was the belief that yesterday's privileges could remain untouched forever. That was the real transfer, and this time, everyone understood it.